James Dean said, when he was asked, what are you rebelling against? And he said, what do you got? So, this is something I was thinking about last night. And I was reflecting on yesterday's video about all this co-creation stuff, shadows, mirrors, and that quote came to mind, and I had a horrific bout of insomnia, and these ideas kept swirling around in my head, and I'm kind of like, shut up, leave me alone. I kind of feel like I've said what I need to say in regards to Satanism and Luciferianism and Christ. But I don't know if my subconscious feels that it's unresolved, or is belaboring because it's stuck in a loop, or something is being revealed, because I've tried to put this together, and part of the reason why I was up all night was because I was trying to understand what I kept on being shown, what kept on looping in my head. And what kept on looping in my head was that this scaffolding of the creation pattern, the scaffolding of the creation pattern in the void that creates intelligent shadows, that creates the Satanists, the destroyers. It's also important to understand that there are mirrors of that as well. Everything is a Mandelbrot set. So mirrors everywhere. Reflections of reflections of reflections, because the creation pattern goes microscopic and macroscopic. I feel like a broken record, but what I was being shown is that it's important to understand the archetypes of Satan, Lucifer, and Christ within you. So maybe yesterday's video was incomplete. Maybe there was more to it, because the mirror is that, ironically, the video that I made yesterday was about how we create who we are. But I guess I left out that all these archetypes, not the actual things, not the actual deities, but aspects of them are within us. So if we're going to create the universe, co-create the universe with God, we need to be aware of all the shadow work that we need to do, so that we can transcend duality. And the satanic aspect of it, the archetype, the atheistic application of Satanism, is a childish mentality that we may have, which is what James Dean was saying. What are you rebelling against? What do you got? Whatever the authority is, or whatever the norm is, I'm just going to automatically do the opposite. That's Satanism, idiom version. Doesn't make it necessarily evil. You're not doing it to be evil. You're doing it because on an animal level, like my dog, for instance, I mess with her and I play with her, and when she'll come up and lean up against me, and I'll kind of push her butt away, because she's a Great Pyrenees, so she's a big dog. She can push you over, and she'll automatically, instinctively lean into me harder. This instinct is instinctive pushback. This instinctive rebellion, rebel without a cause, is this satanic, the Satan archetype within us. Many people use the quote, I give as good as I get. This is an example I use a lot. To which I will always respond, why would you allow somebody else to dictate how you behave? You dictate how you behave. So don't lower yourself. If someone's treating you shitty, you can just say, all right, cool, well, you know, you can maybe think to yourself, they're having a bad day. Everyone's fighting the good fight. It's not about me. And walk away. You know, be like, hey, take care, whatever. But everybody will respond in kind. Everybody. Most people will respond in kind. And then reinforce to that person that they're right. The world sucks. And you are the proof. This is not an empowering state of mind. You are in reaction. As long as you're reacting, which that's what Satanism is. Satanism. I didn't get sleep last night. I can't even talk. I'm drinking coffee. That's a reaction. You have to have the cause, which is God, and then you have to have a reaction, the rebellion, the inversion, the reflexive pushback. You don't even know what you're pushing back against. You just you feel the push and you automatically push back. You resist. It's a reflex. This is an animal reflex. To protect what's yours. To survive. It's a survival reflex. It doesn't take any mentality, any kind of cognizant thinking to do. A lot of people are here. Now the archetype of Lucifer, this is separate because Satan is dark. Lucifer is light, false light. He's an angel of light. Satan is Saturn. Lucifer is Venus, the morning star, false light. And if you understand that all these gods are conflated they're all the same gods and some of them are mixed together, and you have to understand that Lucifer is Prometheus. If you subscribe to the idea that the ideas of the Gnostics that believe that Sophia created the demiurge, and the demiurge is kind of an idiot god that created humanity, and this is the Old Testament God. I'm super oversimplifying, okay? So don't quote me in this. I'm just trying to get to my point. And Prometheus, there's other gods, also the Elohim, the divine council, and Prometheus, and I'm mixing up old school Mesopotamian gods and Greek gods, and because they're all mixed up. They're just different names. So if I don't have the names right, please don't break my balls about it. I'm just trying to get to the point. So these gods, so Prometheus stole fire from the gods, wisdom, knowledge, because the gods basically said, no, we don't want humans to have that. They're not ready for it. And Prometheus believed that you can become a god, and stole fire from the gods, stole wisdom. And then it's arguable. This is what I kept being shown in my dream, is I kept on having different archetypes in the garden approach Adam and Eve for different reasons. To leave the garden, to leave the proverbial nest so they can learn to fly on their own. I'm not saying this like I've got conviction behind any one of these versions, but what kept replaying, one of the things that kept replaying is that first Satan comes in and is spiteful against God. So that's why he seduced Adam and Eve. Then Lucifer came in. And then God, being the demiurge in that version, and Lucifer being Prometheus, he's basically helping them escape the garden, which is a gilded cage, a beautiful prison, right? And then I saw Christ pretending to be the snake, which a lot of occult beliefs will argue that Christ was the snake. I don't necessarily believe that. I don't know what I believe for the intents and purposes of this, because it's still swirling around in my head, and like I said, I'm kind of half delusional because I didn't sleep last night. And then what might motivate Christ to push Adam and Eve out of their comfort zone, because people only move away from pain, not towards pleasure. Or so that's why not everybody, there's exceptions obviously, but the vast majority will only move when they are threatened with pain, when they are ostracized, when they are forced to move. And that's why there's so many people that are completely unhappy in the world, and they have all these dreams that they gave up on, because it's easier to be miserable and comfortable in your misery because it's familiar, than to pursue your dreams and venture into the unknown outside the garden walls, because that's dangerous. In the dualistic mindset, outside is death. Outside of anything that you know is certain death. So you're never really compelled. You're always hesitant to go outside your comfort zone, if that could be the garden, because you don't know what's out there. And to the ego, the unknown equals death. So these are the archetypes, the three archetypes, and they're relatable to the ego, and it's all about the child within. The child within, like my son, I'll tell him something and he'll be like, "No, he didn't even hear half of what I said." But sometimes he'll reflexively just say no. He doesn't want to do it. Whatever it is, he doesn't want to do it. That's a childish mentality. That's and I'm not calling him satanic, but the archetype is just an inverted response. You said this, I'm just going to say the opposite. I don't even know what we're talking about, but I'm going to resist. The next is what I call the spiritual ego. The ego is it's a survival program in your brain. It's the operating system of the beast body. So it always wants to survive. So when you meditate and when you contemplate on the bigger questions that transcend the human flesh, the meat puppet, the avatar, it fears for its life, because the only thing that it cares about is survival. Survival, personal survival, and survival through procreation, which are both survival. That's all it cares about. So what happens to most people when they enter the false light stage of being a child, I guess it would be like a teenager, that ego, in order to survive, becomes what's called a spiritual ego. It masquerades as being enlightened, as false light, because it knows a lot, I am completely aware of my spiritual ego. I'm not enlightened. I'm constantly looking at myself and testing everything that I think about to make sure that it's airtight, or as airtight as I can possibly make it with what I know. I'm always happy to accept arguments and consider things that I don't believe in, and simulate them in my mind so that I can test everything, and so that I don't buy into my own bullshit. But the spiritual ego is very, very clever. It's surviving. So it's going to turn into whatever you need it to be so that it can still be there. So a lot of people, and this is one of the main points that kept on rolling in loops in my head, was that I keep hearing people talking about how Lucifer and Christ are the same. And they're just a dualistic archetype that's being used to exploit humanity, to exploit believers. On that level, yeah, Christ and Lucifer are the same. On the dualistic level, as a tool to manipulate the masses, yes, he says, I am the morning star. And so does Lucifer. Lucifer's the morning star. Christ says, I am the morning star. There's a lot of interpretations that I think have been intentionally finagled so that they made them interchangeable. But the Christ is not Lucifer. He's not Lucifer. The Christ is the transcendence of duality, because the Lucifer Christ dualistic version, the archetype, is just a spiritual ego, the ego pretending. But you cannot pretend to be good without evil, because duality demands balance. As above, so below. Demands it. It can't not do it. It's mirrors. Duality is mirrors. Smoke and mirrors. Shadows and light. The throne, not the pretender to the throne, which is Lucifer, and Lucifer pretending to be Christ. Dualistic. But the true Christ, the throne, not the pretender to the throne, transcends ego. And transcends past the integrity line, gets you into your heart, which is whole. And eventually, you speak your truth, you see the world without the filter of the labels you've already been given by somebody else before you were too young to question what those things mean, because you assign meaning to things and you don't even know where you got the meanings. That's why we sleepwalk through our lives. Once you transcend and live in real time, because there's a 1/10,000th of a second delay while we process the information and put labels on things and dismiss things without actually seeing them. Once we transcend the ego, dissolve the ego, we are able to pass this level to the next one. And that is true Christ consciousness. It's very confusing. It's extremely confusing. I don't know if I've made it clear enough, but I really hope I have, because I keep hearing this about my battery's getting ready to die here. I keep hearing people talking about this this trickery of the church, and how Christ is just Lucifer pretending. And he's not. That is not true. The earthly version, that is often preached is the pretender. So you got to be really careful. And the founding fathers, really quickly, they say they were deists, but they were Luciferians because they were Masons. And always remember, the stone that the builders, the Masons rejected was Christ, the real Christ. And the stones that they use, according to Morals and Dogma and their literature, is Lucifer. But if you understand that this is a necessary evolutionary step, and I'm not saying to entertain evil, I'm just saying this is a necessary evolutionary step as an archetype within us that we have to work to transcend because we buy into our own bullshit. If you get stuck there, that's where the problem is. It's a transient stage. It's a transient archetype that we need to aspire to get out of, to ascend out of and beyond. And the founding fathers understood that government, heaven is basically communist. The only reason it works is because no one's corrupt. So there's no government system needed. It doesn't work on earth because everyone's corrupt and earth is dualistic. That's why they gave the power to the people, so that they could transcend government and govern themselves. It's our job to transcend. I hope that made sense. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Maybe. If I get some sleep.